how the mental ill is it has this, people think it's supernatural, okay? And like, trust me, Jerry did not believe it. Like, Jerry was a true scientist, in the true sense of the word. But, and he would make the supernatural real, through the illegal frequencies he explored, okay? Which I know nothing, if he even explored these frequencies, it's that type of thing. So, but it's just when you have that level of genius in your family, what happens is, and that's involved in classified government things, you're out of the matrix, okay, quote unquote. You're if that's like, and I don't think Jerry wasn't one, he was a psychiatrist at the end of the day. Like, he studied how to be mentally healthy, okay, and he believed in emotions. He understood that human beings had emotions, and that this is what, like, he didn't see psychiatry as a science. He was a true scientist. He's like, psychiatry is not a science. No matter how hard it wants to be a science, it's not a science. I think he saw it more as an art, and, he understood, like, emotional factors are at play. I think that was the name of his paper, from, like, the 50s. He understood, like, look, we're all just, like, we got a lot of people who are refusing to feel their feelings, okay? And he understood, he was the psychiatrist of the DuPont company, meaning, like, yes, he probably treated some of the crazy DuPont, rich people, but no, he worked for their company, meaning, like, he was the one evaluating the people working at DuPont, because whatever, I don't even know what DuPont does, but they have factories, and they make something that where if something goes wrong, like, everyone's gonna die. Like, if someone F's up their job at the DuPont factory, like, everyone is going to die. Okay, so who's in the factory, and maybe there's gonna be a nuclear explosion, like, type of thing. Like, he was in charge of making sure that the people who were operating these systems were mentally stable enough to not kill everybody. Okay? Like, that was his job. So, he was sort of like, he was on the cutting edge of, like, the human psyche, human emotions, and the machine, and, being a successful producer, okay? And, or being, having a successful factory, having, like, understanding that, like I was talking about, like, in my visions of Jerry, it's like, oh, he created me probably in a government laboratory. I don't know, like, he probably created me. I was probably originally an experiment, and then, like, they tried to clone me when I was 2 to finish Jerry's project, and then, you know what I mean? But it's like, this is my vision, but, and then, so I lived a life where I was actually one of Jerry's children, and my dad was my brother. That's weird, I know, right? And, because I was a scientific experiment, I was one of the, I was a classified scientific experiment, but, there was sort of like Jerry had two, he had his biological family, which was just made through natural reproduction. And then, then he had his weird scientific experiment children, who were highly government classified. And, ultimately he was there to be like, okay, this is not mentally healthy. Like, he was the one telling everyone, like, he was the one hired in the agency to be like, okay, guys, this is not mentally healthy. We're creating Frank, he was kind of like the one who people would go to for that type of, okay, well, how do we deal with the fact that, all right, now the scientists are psychotic because they created they created me, and I'm, clearly I need, this was a mistake, but now it's not humane to just execute me. And then, it's like, anyway, all these things. So, what Jerry did is he had me placed, frozen and then placed into my current family. And, and they tried a few more scientific experiments on me just to stick it to Jerry, because Jerry probably told a lot of people no. He probably told a lot of powerful people, like, this is cruel. like, you're not treating people right. He came up with this idea of practical humanitarianism. He was someone who understood, emotions, but also just, he was probably like the guy who was like, guys, like, MK Ultra is not, is wrong. Ultimately, we're creating mentally ill people when we, subject them to torture. Like, here's the data. Like, it's not science, but he was the psychiatrist data guy to, that people, that he lived the American dream. He came from nothing. He came from absolutely nothing. And because of his own, usefulness in the world, did well for himself. But, I don't think that ever meant anything to him. He was, I think he was more of like because he understood the healer shaman aspect of it. He understood that human beings are horribly out of touch with their emotions, and we treat each other so cruelly, and we do horrible things. We created me, and he regrets his creation. But now, because of his humanity and the fact that, they used his genes to make me, I'm basically one of his children. So, all right, we'll just freeze you and put you in the future where, you're not going to be, like, hunted and killed, or you're not going to be, like, tortured by the government, So, I'm just saying, like, that's a vision I had, but, I had, like, I have memories of Jerry, from when I was originally created, and who knows what I looked like. Maybe I was just like a, who knows? Maybe I was a blob. Maybe I was a doll that they, injected, human DNA into and then grew biological things. So I was like a weird doll, but I had his genius, and he observed that, oh my God, well, this thing is, this is a biological being that, we thought it was just a scientific experiment that we could control, but oh great, no, now there's moral implications, okay, and I have responsibility for this, for me now, so, and this is bad, so let's just freeze her, and, we'll put her in a normal human body and figure out, how to do that in the future. But I have visions of me and my other, scientific freak experiment, children of Jerry, some of whom, we shared DNA, some of us who didn't, but, we actually, we got to go up in rocket ships and go to outer space, because, Jerry was that level of, like, mechanical engineering, highly classified, right? Government, and, Jerry was with us, and, we got to eject, someone tried to murder me? Okay, well, we eject him into outer space. Like, we got to do all that stuff. And then, before we were put into hiding and secrecy, because, because Jerry, like, even though we were freaks and we were like, barely human, we were human experiments with biological consciousness and human DNA rather than, we were just seen as experiments. We weren't seen as, human beings. And we were kept in cages. And, but he didn't see us that way. We were his children. We were his children. And, that was a beautiful consciousness to bring into science. Okay? So, a message from Frida Kahlo. It says, "You are stronger than you think and more than you know. Be curious and determined." Oh, see, that's what Jerry would tell us, like, through the cage bars. He'd be like, guys, I got us a space mission, so we're going to go on a great adventure. I'm going with us, and, we're going to have family bonding time, while we're, while we're running experiments about, efficient, the kind of crew you need to man a spaceship, okay? And so, if there's anyone who's murderous, you're getting ejected into outer space because we're all on this mission together, and we can't, we need to have each other's backs. We need teamwork, and Jerry, and, it's okay, I can fix the engine if it needs fixing, but I can also be everyone's, I can also we'll also figure out how to create an emotional support system together because, you're not, I consider you my children, even though you're scientific experiments. Well, you're worthy of, love and like a healthy emotional life. All right. So this was Jerry. Grandfather Jerry. I'm so lucky to have him as my grandfather, but it's all classified, so. Okay, it says, you are stronger than you think and more than you know. Be curious and determined. All of this is just not real, okay? So I'm making this up. This is a vision. It's symbolically speaking, so it's fantasy, okay? I'm in, everything I just told you about Jerry is a fantasy because I never actually met him, and I have no idea, when you have that kind of bloodline, you get protection, and it's taken me a long time to understand this. People would tell me, they'd be like, the reason you're so unseen is because it's for your protection, okay? Like, people would tell me that. And it was so frustrating to me because we live in the social media age where it's like, oh, well, if you're successful, you need to have views and likes, and it's like, oh, but wait, no, well, you're so classified that we can't allow people to like or view you because it's too dangerous. You're too protected. It's because, so I'm just saying there's a certain catch-22, all right, here. And, but Jerry's working on it for me in the spirit realm, he's working on it for me. He's working out the solution, all right, because,